Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 142 based on novel. So let's start. Frozen grass. Xiao Yan stared excitedly at the ice blue grass plants floating in the air in front of him. His black eyes were full of surprise. Frozen grass is just like its name. It has a terrible cold smell. Its medicine is cold and can resist the long-term refining of most flames. It can be said that frozen grass is one of the few medicinal materials that can restrain flames. However, at present, quick frozen grass is one of the last two herbs Xiao Yan needs to refine ice elixir. It's really broken iron shoes. There's nowhere to find. It takes no time. I couldn't find you like that before. Now I can't think of saving them. You appear honestly. Staring at the frozen grass in front of him, Xiao Yan couldn't help sighing. Even in the eyes of the two people, they carefully put the frozen grass in front of them in a jade box, and then put it into the ring again. Although no soul fruit was found, the frozen grass was also an unexpected joy for Xiao Yan at the moment. Since entering the ruins, Xiao Yan has a faint hunch in his heart that there will be no small harvest during his trip to the ancient ruins. The spirit stone full of the stone chamber is only the beginning. Even the frozen grass is only a part of all the harvest. It must be a greater surprise to meet him later. Thinking of this, the fiery color in Xiao Yan's eyes became more prosperous. However, immediately, the bursts of weakness from his body pulled Xiao Yan back to reality at this time. Indeed, no matter how beautiful he imagined in his heart, he was weak at the moment, and his fighting spirit had not recovered, let alone imagine the so-called greater harvest. Alas! He sighed helplessly in his heart. Xiao Yan was not polite in front of the two elders and directly put this snow-white ring on his hand. After some exploration just now, in this ring, except for a small part of all kinds of strange stones, other things are medicinal materials. Obviously, the two old men in front of them are not medicine refiners. Anyway, they also keep them. It's better for Xiao Yan to take them by himself. For this, the two old men naturally had an idea in their hearts, otherwise they would not really give the ring to Xiao Yan honestly. However, when Xiao Yan looked up, he saw a trace of other look in their old eyes. Seeing this, Xiao Yan immediately smiled in his heart. Although it doesn't matter what he said, these things are the result of their efforts. At present, they are all taken away by Xiao Yan. They are still reluctant to give up. With a slight turn of his eyes, Xiao Yan immediately smiled without politeness. With a slight turn of his white wrist, a golden light flashed across the ring on his finger. Immediately, two exquisite jade bottles appeared in Xiao Yan's hands. At the moment when the jade bottle appeared in Xiao Yan's hand, the look on the faces of the two old men couldn't help moving slightly. Even the breath between the nose involuntarily became slightly hasty. Hehe, after all, I took your things. These pills can be regarded as some compensation for you. There are 6 third-order pills in each of the 2 jade bottles. Take them. Xiao Yan flexed his fingers, and 2 hanging jade bottles flew to the 2 old men. Seeing this, they hurriedly took the 2 jade bottles and carefully connected them in their hands. These are 6 third-order pills. Xiao Yan can treat them so casually, but they are reluctant to give up. After receiving the jade bottle, they immediately opened it and took a hard breath between their noses. The rich Dan fragrance immediately excited their faces. Together with their eyes, they also looked very excited. These 6 pills are not only third-order pills, but also their quality. Among all the third-order pills, they can definitely be called top grade. If this level of third-order pills are really sold at the auction, even some powerful people will be afraid to help themselves. After all, even if the pills of the same level are of different quality, their power is very different. Generally speaking, even if there are 2 types of pills with the same quality, their value will be determined. Even some high-quality third-order pills can make some low-quality fourth-order pills incomparable. Sometimes, the quality of pills is the key to their value. Even if they are high-grade pills, their value will be greatly reduced without good quality. At present, the quality of the 6 third-order pills presented by Xiao Yan to these 2 elders can undoubtedly squeeze into the middle and upper reaches of the third-order pills. How can this not excite them? When the 2 elders saw Xiao Yan's strange eyes, they couldn't help smiling awkwardly. Then they quickly restrained the expression on the old face. Immediately, they looked at each other, got up and respectfully saluted Xiao Yan. At the same time, they also spoke respectfully, saying, "Thank you, Mr. Xiao Yan, for your kindness." Seeing this, Xiao Yan's pale face couldn't help but be slightly stunned. He immediately waved his hand, hurriedly got up and shook his head and said, Why do you two elders give me such a big gift? Anyway, I'm just a junior in front of you. I can't stand it. Mr. Xiao Yan is joking. Yuanwu mainland respects its strength. As long as it has strong enough strength, it is the elder. The so-called first person is respected. Mr. Xiao Yang has great strength and can naturally afford the worship of us. The two people said this and looked down more and more at Xiao Yang's bent waist. Xiao Yang also understood in his heart that it was completely impossible for him to stop. After all, they were also strong against the emperor. They were not in a state at the moment. What they wanted to do, how could they stop themselves? In desperation, Xiao Yang had to accept their salute silently. Immediately after that, Xiao Yang glanced outside the stone chamber, but couldn't help frowning. Just now, he seemed to have noticed that a pair of strange eyes were looking at him, but there was only such a short moment, which made Xiao Yang unable to capture the source of the sight. Helpless, after all, Xiao Yang is in such a bad state that it's hard to explore with his soul power. It's not surprising to see something wrong. Helpless, Xiao Yang took back his eyes. Immediately, Xiao Yang looked at the two old people in front of him again. At the moment, they also happened to get up and saw that there was no different look on their faces. Xiao Yang confirmed his mind. Since even the two strong fighters didn't notice the difference, he must have read it wrong. Mr. Xiao Yang is really a dragon and phoenix among people. He has been so promising at a young age. I'm afraid he will make extraordinary achievements in the future. The three sat down again. Among the two elders, an old man in a blue robe couldn't help arched his hands at Xiao Yang and said a semi-compliment. The old man in blue robe laughed, and another old man arched his hand and said with a smile. They showed respect in their eyes when they looked at Xiao Yang. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang shook his head with a bitter smile. He was really overbearing in the previous war, but what can he do? He is not embarrassed at the moment. You two don't have to make fun of me. If you weren't around me today, I'm afraid those guys outside the door would have rushed in and attacked me. Mr. Xiao Yang is joking. With your puppet, let alone a few half-emperors, it's really the strong man fighting the emperor. I'm afraid I can't get close to you. The old man laughed and glanced involuntarily at Beiwang standing beside the three people. He felt incomparable metal, the purple and gold streamer slowly flowed, and the cold breath seemed to resist people thousands of miles away. Even though they were both strong against the emperor, they still felt endless dignity in the face of Beiwang. This is true, but the three old men in black didn't give them a feeling together. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang smiled non-committally and didn't tangle too much on this issue. The two elders in front of him obviously saw this. They looked at each other and smiled, even though they turned the topic with, "Ahaha. I don't know what Mr. Xiao Yang plans to do next." This time, the old man in blue robe asked about the point. As soon as he said this, Xiao Yang's pale face immediately became serious. When they saw this, the joke on their faces was also swept away, and they didn't dare to be careless. Do you two know where there is soul condensation fruit in this relic? With the silence of the atmosphere in the field, Xiao Yang asked the two old people in front of him again after a good film. Hearing the speech, the two old men could not help but frown slightly. The old man in blue robe bowed his head and thought for a moment, but frowned and shook his head gently. Ning soul fruit, that thing is really too valuable. If Mr. Xiao Yang wants to find it outside, I'm afraid it won't be easy. Periphery? Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang couldn't help but slightly raised his eyebrows and was surprised. Along the way, he also heard the people's call for their position at the moment. The stone chamber passages they live in now seem to be the outermost part of the whole relic, but he doesn't know what kind of scene it is in the deep part of the relic. Yes, our position is just the periphery of the relic. The old man in blue robe nodded and said. At the same time, the old man in blue robe in front of him opened his mouth again and said, "As far as I know, the whole site is divided into 3 layers. Of course, this is also the general stratification of most sites. The first layer, which is the outermost area where we are now, is only the cheapest goods in the whole site. I believe Xiao Yang can understand this without saying more." Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang nodded again and continued to listen to the old man. The periphery of this relic is called the Boulder Hall. The most valuable thing in it can only arouse the interest of the 3-star fighting emperor at most. That's why my brothers stay here. At this point, the old man's face was embarrassed, and the old man on the side couldn't help laughing. Soon, the old man continued. In the middle layer of this relic, it is said that it is an ancient forest, and the things in it can be called the real treasure. After all, the ancient forest has existed for many years. The strength of warcraft has generally reached the level of fighting emperor. There is the tomb of all the semi-imperial strong men. At the same time, it also divides the whole relic by grade, but it is said that 3, 6, 9 and so on are not bad. Hearing the words of emotion in the old man's mouth, Xiao Yan couldn't help nodding secretly, and his heart was also filled with emotion. However, the rules of this continent are like this. Whoever has a big fist is qualified to speak. Here is always a world full of barbarism and hegemony. If you want to survive and grow here, you not only need terrible cultivation talents, but also all kinds of opportunities are particularly important. Like this relic, the strong stick to one side and will always be the strong. Although the weak can win small profits, in their eyes, the weak are always the weak and have no ability to enter the depths of the relic. Similarly, they are not qualified to enter. The so-called ability is used to knock them down, and the so-called qualification is to knock them down. As for the depths of the ruins, the situation there is still unknown. After all, even those who broke into the ruins at the beginning, few people can go out alive from the middle. At the end of the sentence, the old man in blue can't help frowning and shaking his head. He doesn't know much about the depths of this relic, let alone him. I'm afraid he is the people of the 4 families. Hearing this, Xiao Yang could not help but frown. Although the old man in blue robe explained the layout of the ruins, from beginning to end, Xiao Yang didn't get the answer he most wanted in his heart. The whereabouts of Ning's soul fruit. At present, if Xiao Yang really wants to explain the whereabouts of Ning's soul fruit by himself, I'm afraid there is only the middle layer of the relic or the deeper inside of the relic. Thinking of this, Xiao Yang couldn't help but sink a little. If the soul is really in the depths of the ruins, then he will inevitably have a head-on conflict with the people of the 4 families at that time. If it was in the heyday of Xiao Yang, maybe he was sure to entangle with them, but now, alas. Thinking of this, Xiao Yang couldn't help sighing again. At this time, another old man in a grey robe hesitated in his old eyes for a moment, and suddenly frowned at Xiao Yang. Mr. Xiao Yang, perhaps, I know where the Ning soul fruit is. Mr. Xiao Yang, perhaps, I know where the Ning soul fruit is. Just as Xiao Yang frowned, the old man in grey robe hesitated for a moment, and then he said to Xiao Yang's uncertain mouth. However, when the old man's words fell, Xiao Yang suddenly raised his dark eyes and stared at the grey-robed old man in front of him. All the emotions in his heart were reflected on Xiao Yang's face at the moment. You said. Do you know where the frozen soul fruit is? Until after a good film was carved, Xiao Yang asked with a slightly uncertain tone. Smelling the speech, the old man in brocade robe also looked at the old man in grey robe curiously at this time. Noticing the 2 people's eyes, the grey-robed old man couldn't help but become a little hesitant again. He also had no bottom in his heart for the news he knew. Until after the good film was carved, the grey-robed old man raised his eyes with a frown and looked at Xiao Yang. After a little consideration in his heart, he said truthfully. This news was told by a friend of mine. At that time, the relic was just discovered, and many strong people broke into it. However, in the end, it seemed to touch the array in the relic. Most of the people who broke in died here, and only a few survived. My friend was just one of the people who escaped. In addition, he is also a strong fighter. When saying this, the old man looked solemn, and at the end of his words, he didn't forget to add the strength of his friend. Although he was lucky to escape, the price he paid was painful. Not only his strength could not be restored in a period of time, but he even lost an arm. Hearing the grey-robed old man's words, Xiao Yang's face could not help but change slightly. Although the old man's words were not very detailed, from this result alone, he could imagine the tragedy of his friend at that time. At the same time, Xiao Yang's heart can't help feeling a shock. It can make a strong man run away in embarrassment and even lose an arm. It seems that it is not as simple and easy as they see now. I can't say that his friend met some terrible guy in the ancient forest among the ruins. Sure enough, then the grey-robed old man spoke again and said, according to my friend, after entering the ruins, most people passed through the outermost boulder hall very smoothly and reached the ancient forest. The vastness there is far from being comparable to this sentence of Lovelorn. Of course, the treasure contained in it is also truly precious. That is, my friend seems to have found a similar soul their fruit trees. Heh! As soon as he heard the frozen soul fruit tree, Xiao Yang's eyes were frozen, and a crazy color came up in the depths of his pupils. Condensing soul fruit tree is the ultimate source of condensing soul fruit. It is condensing soul fruit tree that breeds condensing soul fruit with strong soul power. At the moment, what moves Xiao Yang most is that if there is a condensed soul fruit tree, It means that more than one condensed soul fruit may grow on that condensed soul fruit tree. At the thought of this, Xiao Yang's heart surged up when he was neutral. If it was like that, only one soul coagulating fruit could make Xiao Yang successfully advance to the third-order herbalist. If there were 2 or 3, wouldn't Xiao Yang be able to raise his soul power to the fourth-order herbalist level in a short time? At the thought of this, Xiao Yang's heart not only became more fiery. A 4th-level herbalist, a herbalist of that level, I'm afraid that looking at the whole Western region, he can only exist in the Herbalist Alliance. Now as long as he can get 3 soul-condensing fruits, he has an absolute grasp and can raise his soul power to the level of a 4th-level herbalist. Of course, in the final analysis, this is just a beautiful fantasy in Xiao Yang's heart. The Ninghun fruit tree will bear fruit once every 500 years, only 1 at a time, and only 3 in total. Whenever a new Ninghun fruit is about to grow, the other 2 of them are almost rotten. Therefore, there will only be 1 Ninghun fruit on a Ninghun fruit tree. In addition, it is absolutely impossible to have more. Only then can it be said that the idea in Xiao Yang's heart is just a beautiful fantasy. Then, the old man in the grey robe frowned and thought carefully about all the information his friend told him at that time. Immediately, he said to Xiao Yang. Although he saw the thing, he just looked at it from a distance. When he got close, he found that the Ninghun fruit tree was on a separate island. Around the island, there was a huge lake. He was injured because of the lake. At this point, without the old man saying more, Xiao Yang can imagine that the reason why the old man's friend was injured is that there is a warcraft at the level of fighting emperor in the lake. With this in mind, Xiao Yang's eyes flickered slightly and his heart sank slightly. If it was like that, I'm afraid it's not easy to get this soul fruit. I'm afraid the strength of a warcraft is extraordinary if it can make a strong fighter panic and escape, and finally end up in that situation. I wonder if my northern king can fight him. Xiao Yang looked dignified and couldn't help comparing himself secretly. If the North King could have the ability to fight with the warcraft, maybe he would have the opportunity to get the soul condensation fruit, but otherwise, I'm afraid he will lose his only card now. It seems that Xiao Yang's heart is dignified. The old man in grey robe meditates a little and immediately takes a shortcut. It is understood that the warcraft in the lake is an ancient ghost python. Its strength is equivalent to that of a human strongman in the later stage of the Star Dipper Emperor. My friend is slightly stronger than me and has reached the middle stage of the Star Dipper Emperor. Even so, he still can't get 100 moves in front of that guy. Hearing this, Xiao Yang's heart suddenly sank. One of his strength has reached the warcraft in the later stage of the Star Dipper Emperor. It's not easy to defeat him. Especially the other party is a warcraft, and his physical strength is naturally powerful. In the face of it, I'm afraid even the North King is difficult to fight him. After all, in summary, it's really hard to count only by the strength of the North King. At most, they can only fight with the strong in the early days of the ordinary Star Dipper Emperor. Even if they want to defeat each other, it is extremely difficult, not to mention facing the ancient ghost python whose strength has reached the later stage of the Star Dipper Emperor. In the twinkling of an eye, Xiao Yang has rested in the stone chamber for 2 days. Plus the previous time, it has been 10 days since Xiao Yang entered this ancient ruins. In 10 days, after careful calculation, the people of the 4 families may have already arrived in the ancient forest. It's Xiao Yang. If he continues to stay here, if Ning's soul fruit is preempted by the people of the 4 families, he really has no hope. After all, with Xiao Yang today, he doesn't think he can recapture Ning's soul fruit from those guys. Since he wants to get it, he must hurry. Suddenly, Xiao Yang's closed eyes sitting on the slate suddenly opened, and a sharp light suddenly flashed from the bottom of his eyes. The invisible momentum led Xiao Yang to the void in front of him, which was a slight fluctuation. Who? The long exhaled the turbid air held in his chest. Xiao Yang's pale face gradually returned to ruddy, but there was still some malaise in Xiao Yang's eyebrows. With a frown on his brow, Xiao Yang shook his head helplessly and sighed. Immediately, he stood up slowly from the slate. This time, Xiao Yang really consumed too much. In 2 days, Xiao Yang only recovered less than 50% of his strength. If you want to recover completely, I'm afraid you can't do it in 4 or 5 days. However, at present, time is not waiting. If Xiao Yang wants to get the condensed soul fruit, he must go through the boulder hall as soon as possible and reach the ancient forest first. Only then can he have a chance to find the condensed soul fruit. If he continues to stay like this, it's hard to say who the condensed soul fruit belongs to in the end. Mr. Xiao Yang, are you here? When they saw Xiao Yang get up, the 2 elders of Union Pavilion also frowned slightly, and their sitting body stood up. Now, Xiao Yang's position in their hearts is no less than that of their pavilion leader. Facing Xiao Yang, they naturally dare not give birth at will. I think it's time for me to go. Hearing the puzzled voice of the old man in gold robe, Xiao Yang slowly turned around, facing the two old men, meditated and said. As soon as Xiao Yang said this, the two old men looked stunned and immediately looked at each other. Then they looked at Xiao Yang again and couldn't help showing a look of worry. Mr. Xiao Yang, you are not going to. Yes, soul-freezing fruit is my biggest goal, to enter the ancient ruins this time. No matter what, I must get it. Even if it is dangerous, I must break through. Maybe I really get it. Before the words in the mouth of the old man in gold robe fell, Xiao Yang interrupted it with a word. At the end of the words, Xiao Yang pretended to make fun of it easily. Seeing this, the old man in golden robe can only nod silently and pray secretly for Xiao Yang. Since the former has made a decision, they naturally can't change it. Therefore, they can only secretly expect that Xiao Yang won't have anything. Otherwise, even if they go back, it's also difficult to explain to the above. Mr. Xiao Yang, I'm afraid I can't go with you in the future. Therefore, I hope Mr. Xiao Yang can take more care and put his own life first. The old man in gold robe stared at Xiao Yang solemnly, but he couldn't help feeling ashamed in his heart. In other words, if it weren't for Xiao Yang, they would have died in the hands of the three brothers. Now when Xiao Yang is in trouble, they dare not go with him because they are afraid of those warcraft in the ancient forest. It's really a shame. It seemed that he saw what the old man thought. Xiao Yang smiled carelessly, waved his hand gently and said with a smile, Elder, don't blame yourself. This is my personal business. I don't want to involve you too. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will cause you trouble. Seeing this, the two old men couldn't help looking at each other, smiled awkwardly, but didn't say much. Immediately, Xiao Yang didn't say much. He arched his hands at the two old men, turned around and went to the layman of the stone chamber. After that, the two elders hesitated and followed slowly. The reason why they stay in the stone chamber is that Xiao Yang has not recovered. Since Xiao Yang has planned to leave now, they naturally have no need to stay any longer. Mr. Xiao Yang, if you really encounter any trouble and Mr. Xiao Yang can't solve it, please come back here. Although we can't do anything about the guys inside, as long as there are my brothers on the outer layer, no one will hurt Mr. Xiao Yang. At the door of the stone chamber, the old man in golden robe bowed his hands to Xiao Yang again and said. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang was slightly stunned, nodded heavily, thanked the two people, and immediately read a heart. The black robe suddenly condensed on the body surface and shrouded his whole body in it. Then he turned and flew away to the side of the channel. Later, the two elders also looked at Xiao Yang, who turned and left again. Immediately, they turned slowly and flew away in another direction. And at the moment Xiao Yang turned and left, under the black robe, a pair of dark eyes flashed by in an instant. A moment later, Xiao Yang's body was like a gust of wind in the endless passage. Around him, there were more and more intact stone gates. It can be seen that the array on it was also more and more powerful, even so strong that it was difficult to break the 9 stars and half emperors. Of course, I believe it, the value is also quite expensive. However, Xiao Yang at this time has no time to pay attention to these. For Xiao Yang at the moment, no matter how good the treasures in the stone gate are, they are no better than the soul condensation fruit he needs. In addition, there is a mouse behind him at the moment. Sure enough, it seems that the eyes I felt that day, Brother Bing, is you. He whispered in his heart until at a certain moment, Xiaoyan's body suddenly jumped forward, and the soles of his feet fiercely stepped on the void. At the same time, the figure covered by the black robe suddenly turned back, and the palm of his hand turned and blasted out behind him. Where did the mouse come from? It's time to show its original shape after following me for so long. Then the next moment, behind Xiao Yang, the invisible void suddenly vibrated violently, and a section of white palm blasted out. Then, it immediately blasted together with Xiao Yang's blasted palm. Boom! The earth-shaking roar echoed continuously in the wide channel, and the remaining sound was like bursts of bells, shaking people's mind. At the same time, a black and a white figure also flew back in the center of the channel. In the empty channel, the energy storm dissipated, and the golden soft light gradually filled the channel. At this moment, I saw a black and a white figure forming an opposing trend, each standing on one side of the channel. The ground at this distance between the two people, because of the collision just now, the powerful force forcibly tore the ground below, and the cracks like spider webs spread rapidly until the ground under the feet of the two people. I can't imagine that the Hulk can recover to this level in only 2 days, but you're too confident to defeat me just by these. In the passage, in the mouth of the handsome young man in white, the words coming out at this moment sound so cold and piercing, and the irony and disdain in the words are not concealed at all. It's you, Sun Hanchi. On the other side, at this moment, Xiao Yan, who frowned under his black robe, also spoke in a dignified tone. At the same time that the words in his mouth fell, in the center of Xiao Yang's eyebrows, the soul power poured out madly, quickly diffused around along the channel, and explored carefully inch by inch. Since the other party is the young master of the Sun family, one of the 4 families, if the Sun family gather here, it will be really troublesome. Ha ha, you really deserve to be Xiao Yang, who is famous in the western regions. You know our 4 families very well. At this time, Sun Hanchi looked at Xiao Yang with disdain. From the collision just now, the power shown by Xiao Yang at the moment is far from enough to fight against him. That is to say, he alone can easily kill Xiao Yang here. While Sun Hanchi's words fell, Xiao Yang's soul power spread out quickly returned at this moment. After some exploration, Xiao Yang didn't notice other strange smells around. It seems that at the moment, Xiao Yang is only facing Sun Hanchi. Seeing this, Xiao Yang's face under his black robe suddenly showed a sneer. If Sun Hanchi was with his father, Xiao Yang would really have to retreat. However, from the current point of view, it seems that he was separated from his family when he first entered the ruins. In that case, it is not enough to be afraid. The next moment, just when Xiao Yang had an idea in his heart, Sun Hanchi, who was floating in white, suddenly moved. In a flash, he appeared in front of Xiao Yang. His body suddenly twisted in the middle of the air, and a whip leg fell down on Xiao Yang's head. Today let you see the power of fighting the emperor and the strong. When the sound of cold drink fell from Sun Hanchi's mouth, the strong fighting spirit gathered rapidly on Xiao Yang's lower legs, which made the power contained in it more terrible. At the same time, the harsh sound of the wind blew constantly in Xiao Yang's ears. The wind is hunting. The invisible strong wind has fallen over Xiao Yang's head like a sharp blade. In just a moment, Xiao Yang will die under the blow of Sun Hanchi. Just for the first time, Sun Hanchi took his life with such heavy hands. I have to say that Sun Hanchi can really be called a cruel man. However, in spite of this, Xiao Yang's face at the moment was not moved at all. In a pair of dark and clear eyes, his face was extremely calm, just like a windless lake. In the calm, there was a trace of strangeness. Then the next moment, when Sun Hanchi saw that his blow was about to fall on Xiao Yang's head, suddenly, a black light flashed out from Xiao Yang's side. At the same time, a forgiving palm with purple and golden light grabbed Sun Hanchi's lower legs and ankles facing Xiao Yang. Bang! A dull sound like a collision with gold and iron came out. The next moment, the look on Sun Hanchi's face suddenly solidified, and an unbelievable look poured out of his eyes. What? Suddenly, Sun Hanchi's reaction was amazing. Then the next moment, his body was forced to twist in the air, and the soles of his other feet stepped on the sudden figure. However, bang! What Sun Hanchi got from this attack was another fist like steel. It hit the center of his foot heavily. The foot and the whole leg were paralyzed in a moment. At the same time, several bones were squeezed together, and there was a dull sound of bone collision. The sharp pain came. The look on Sun Hanchi's face also became white in the twinkling of an eye. Drops of cold sweat quickly poured out from all over his body. The heart-piercing pain made his whole person tremble violently. Then, Bei Wang, who stood where he was, suddenly twisted his strong body. Immediately, the knee of his right leg hit Sun Hanchi's abdomen in front of him. After a while, Sun Hanchi poured out with great force, and Sun Hanchi's body was like a deflated ball, flying upside down. However, Rao is so. At the moment, Xiao Yang still doesn't dare to be careless. Although Sun Hanchi seems to have been seriously injured, the other party is a strong man fighting the emperor after all. His physical strength is incomparable. The attack just now by the North King seems to be powerful, but it's actually just a pain of flesh and blood. It's not so easy to really hit a strong man fighting the emperor. The heart-redder move stopped the North King, who wanted to continue to fight immediately. Xiao Yang under the black robe showed a pair of dark eyes and looked blandly at Sun Hanchi opposite. Sun Hanchi was hit hard by 2 records in succession. Although Sun Hanchi was not seriously injured at this time, he looked very embarrassed. Is this a puppet? Slowly raised his head, Sun Hanchi stared at the North King opposite. If it hadn't been for him just now, Xiao Yang had already become the soul under his legs. But what about this puppet? The bloody smell on this thing. I seem to have felt it somewhere. However, Sun Hanchi could not help but frown a little. There was a suspicious look in his eyes. He always felt that he had felt the cold and heavy bloody smell from the North King. Suddenly, Sun Hanchi seemed to think of something in his mind. Immediately, he suddenly looked up and stared at Xiao Yang opposite. In his eyes, the cold killing intention gathered wildly. Only after the good film was engraved, did he have a very cold voice. Sun Che. Did you kill him? The cold words seemed to make the air ice. Xiao Yang could even clearly detect that while the sound came out, the temperature in the space became cold in an instant. I don't know whether it's because his attributes repel the cold, or because the temperature in the air is too low. Xiao Yang obviously noticed that the temperature around his body is several times colder than that in other places. When Xiao Yang heard Sun Hanchi's words clearly, his face under the black robe could not help showing a suspicious color. Sun Che didn't seem to have much impression on this person, but then, when Xiao Yang thought of the 4 families, he immediately remembered it. When I first arrived outside the Shilin Mountains, I met people from 4 families in Sangmu town. Later, in the mountains, I killed a group of people from the Sun family in order to save Murong Qianqian. Finally, the man who escaped and was killed by the North King seems to be called Sun Che. Sun Che, I said I didn't kill it. Do you believe it? Facing Sun Hanchi's cold questioning words like an abyss, Xiao Yang's attitude is as calm as before. If Sun Shuro were present, Xiao Yang would really have no backhand power. However, if he only faced a Sun Hanchi, relying on the North King alone would be enough to suppress it. If Xiao Yang was not in a state now, Xiao Yang believed that he could suppress Sun Hanchi by his own means. When Sun Hanchi heard Xiao Yang's unabashed words, his face became distorted because of the sudden anger in his heart. His extremely cold killing intention gushed out uncontrollably. A pair of scarlet eyes stared at Xiao Yang in front of him. If he could, he would have killed Xiao Yang thousands of times with his eyes. Xiao Yang. Do you know that Sun Che is my brother? He is my close relative. How dare you kill him? Sun Hanchi, who was about to burst out in his heart, had a ferocious face, and the expression on his face could not help a burst of distortion. His voice was extremely hoarse and roared in a low voice. Ha ha, joke. At that time, he brought many people to take my life. If he didn't kill him, would it be difficult for me to stand and let him kill? Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang was not afraid at all, but smiled coldly. Poof. Suddenly, the ice-blue fighting spirit suddenly gushed out on the surface of Sun Hanchi's body. In the twinkling of an eye, in the void around him, sharp blades condensed by cold ice formed rapidly. At the same time, Sun Hanchi's hands are also sealed together. In the palm of his hand, the thick fighting spirit is pouring out madly. Xiao Yang can clearly perceive that the energy in this space is rapidly condensed with the change of Sun Hanchi's hands. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang didn't dare to be careless. His mind moved. The North King immediately stood in front of Xiao Yang like an iron tower. From this angle, any attack of Sun Hanchi would be completely resisted by the North King. Then, at the moment when the knot in Sun Hanchi's hand completely fell, in a pair of scarlet eyes, endless killing meant that it turned into a startling roar at this moment. At the same time, Sun Hanchi's palm slammed towards the North King. At the moment when Sun Hanchi's palm blew out, the invisible void suddenly collapsed. At the same time, an ice-blue handprint also floated out of Sun Hanchi's palm. Looking at the crystal-clear appearance of the palm, people who don't know thought it was just a beautiful decoration, but only the real strong can see the power contained in this palm. In addition, following this palm, there are countless sharp blades condensed by cold ice. When they are added together, they tear the void in an instant. In an instant, they have come to the North King. Facing Sun Hanchi's powerful blow, Beiwang waved his big hand and slammed his fist into the void in front of him. With time and terrible power, an invisible pit appeared in the void in front of him in an instant. At the same time, the space collapsed and an invisible fist seal burst out and rushed at the oncoming handprint. Bang bang. Then, without hesitation, the North King again waved more than 10 fists. The invisible void fluctuated violently in front of him, and the fierce fist marks also swept out and swept away. Boom. When the two touched, the powerful force suddenly exploded. Although Sun Hanchi's blow was powerful, today's Beiwang was a strong man at the level of quasi-fighting emperor, and the power of more than a dozen punches was no worse. Therefore, the handprint condensed by Sun Hanchi was finally destroyed in Beiwang's hands. Then, the ice blades condensed by the cold ice still had a fierce momentum. In a twinkling of an eye, they passed through the void and fell on the North King. Bang bang. The sharp ice blades are all with a fierce momentum like a sword. At the moment of touching Beiwang's body, there are inch-deep pits left on it, and the countless ice blades fall one after another. In the twinkling of an eye, Beiwang's body immediately becomes uneven. Moreover, at the same time, whenever an ice blade falls, the place where the North King's body contacts with it will be immediately covered by a layer of cold ice, but in the twinkling of an eye, the whole body of the North King will be completely frozen under the cold ice. The heavy ice bound Beiwang's body tightly, making him unable to move at all. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yan could not help frowning slightly. Immediately, with a big hand, the strange fire in his body wanted to rush out and melt the solid ice on the body surface for the North King. At this time, there was a sharp breaking wind over Xiao Yang's head. Xiao Yang, die. Seeing this scene, the expression on Xiao Yang's face under his black robe changed slightly. His feet moved and Tianju's step was displayed in an instant. Then his body shape disappeared in place like a breeze. Then, Sun Hanchi lost his fight, and his anger suddenly increased. His body flashed again. When Xiao Yang just appeared, Sun Hanchi's body had also come to Xiao Yang. Damn it! There was a secret way in his heart. Now he was not in the state, and the power of Tianjuobu could not be fully exerted, which enabled Sun Hanchi to catch up with him at such a fast speed. Now Sun Hanchi shot again, but Xiao Yang could not avoid it. Even with the magic of Tianjuobu, it was also difficult to avoid in such a short distance. In desperation, Xiao Yang had to mention the few fighting spirit in his body. With a big hand, the fighting spirit condensed in the palm of his hand. In a twinkling of an eye, he covered his whole palm. Bang! The two white palms left immediately when they touched in the air. Xiao Yang's body under the black robe suddenly shook. His body immediately withdrew uncontrollably and stepped firmly on the ground. Each step will leave an inch-deep footprint on the ground. When Xiao Yang's face was dignified and set his body shape, he couldn't help making a dull hum in his throat. His already pale face became even whiter at the moment. Damn it, with the current state, it can't be his opponent. After taking a deep breath, Xiao Yang felt the fishy and sweet smell from his throat. He couldn't help scolding in his heart. But looking at the North King, the latter is still firmly sealed by the solid ice and can't get out of trouble at all, let alone help Xiao Yang. Seeing this, the muscles on Xiao Yang's face couldn't help twitching. He bit his teeth and wanted to move. When he just took back his sight from the North Middle King of the Ice, he suddenly coagulated and looked at it again. Then, in the depths of Xiao Yang's eyes, his surprise suddenly appeared. This is. Do you want to make a real breakthrough? After a while, the haze in Xiao Yang's heart suddenly cleared away, and what he turned to was a deep sense of surprise. Staring at the frozen Beiwang, I saw black lightning running like a spirit snake. Under the solid ice, the rugged body of the Beiwang was also recovering rapidly with the speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, the slightly dim purple-gold streamer on the Beiwang's body gradually became pure at the moment. Shua! While Xiao Yang was distracted, Sun Hanchi suddenly flashed with a sneer on his face. In the twinkling of an eye, he appeared in front of Xiao Yang. Without hesitation, he slapped Xiao Yang's face. At the same time, feeling the strong wind coming from the front, Xiao Yang also quickly regained his mind and thought. Long Huang's ancient armor instantly covered his whole body, and his arms quickly blocked in front of him, blocking the oncoming blow. Bang! When the blow fell, Xiao Yang flew out upside down, and Sun Hanchi bullied him. Then he fell hard on Xiao Yang's head. Under the black robe, Xiao Yang's face changed rapidly, but he was also extremely helpless to resist Sun Hanchi's attack in front of people. Xiao Yang, dare to kill my brother. Today, I'll break you to pieces, Sun Hanchi shouted angrily. The attack in his hand became more and more fierce. His fighting spirit was fierce and his moves were fatal. Under such a fierce attack, even Xiao Yang had to defend in a panic. Helpless, it can't blame Xiao Yang for being so passive. If he hadn't lost his strength now, it wouldn't be so easy to hurt him by the people in front of him. On the other side, Beiwang, who was sealed in the ice, gradually recovered with the pits on his body, and the purple and gold streamers lingering on his body surface became clearer and clearer. Unconsciously, dense small cracks also quickly covered the whole ice. Bang! 1 foot fell, Xiao Yang flew out in a panic. A trace of blood gradually flowed down the corner of his mouth under the black robe. Xiao Yang's face became pale. Sun Hanchi's mouth was with a very cold smile, and his eyes were filled with cold killing intention. Then the next moment, Sun Hanchi's body moved suddenly. When Xiao Yang looked up, it had already appeared over his head. With a twist of his body and a whip leg, he fell hard on Xiao Yang's head. This time, Xiao Yang had no defense. Even if it was a shot, it was too late. Xiao Yang, die. With the sound of cold drink falling from Sun Hanchi's mouth, the next moment, while Xiao Yang's face changed, the whip leg also came to Xiao Yang's head at a very fast speed. In a moment, Xiao Yang will become the soul of Sun Hanchi's men. Boom. However, at this time, behind Sun Hanchi, the ice layer that originally imprisoned the North King exploded. At the same time, in front of Sun Hanchi, a purple and golden streamer flashed out in an instant. In the latter's sudden and dramatic face, a punch hit Sun Hanchi's face. The huge force poured down. In a burst of crack sound of bone fragmentation, Sun Hanchi's body immediately flew out of control. Finally, it hit a wall at the end of the passage. The whole body was deeply embedded in it and looked embarrassed. When Xiao Yang raised his eyes and looked in front of him, the look in his eyes was also a surprise. Finally, at this critical moment, he finally caught up. In front of this sudden purple and gold streamer, it is naturally the North King. What is different from before is that the North King at the moment has made a real breakthrough and reached the level of fighting the Emperor. If the previous North King can only be called a quasi-emperor, then at this moment, standing in front of Xiao Yang is a real Star King, North King. This video will end here.